Belisarius, the Emperor's sword. The world Belisarius was born into did not feel like the Roman Empire of old. The marble cities and straight roads still existed. Latin was still carved into stone. Legions still guarded frontiers that had been watched for centuries. But behind the surface, the empire had changed. Its capital now lay in Constantinople, not Rome. Its officers spoke Greek as often as Latin. Its borders were under pressure from every direction. And the idea of a united Mediterranean world, the world Rome once commanded, was only a memory. It was into this changing world that Belisarius came to life in Thrace, sometime around the year 500. Thrace had always produced soldiers. Life there was hard, the winters unforgiving, the land rough and open. The empire built its frontier armies from men who grew up hearing the sounds of marching boots and border alarms. Belisarius absorbed that world from childhood. There was discipline in it, but also uncertainty. Armies were often the first victims of imperial politics, and a young man never knew how far talent alone could take him. He entered military service early, most likely through the household troops connected to Justinian, who at the time was rising through the political ranks of Constantinople. The imperial capital was a city of contradictions. Its palace shimmered, its churches towered, and its scholars produced extraordinary works. But it was also crowded, noisy, and volatile. The factions of the Hippodrome, originally sporting clubs, had grown into political forces with their own loyalties. Senators plotted against emperors. Generals rose and fell on rumors alone. To work in the palace guard meant living close to the center of danger and opportunity. Belisarius learned how to handle this world the same way he learned to handle a battlefield. Stay calm, think before acting, and keep loyalty clear. Justinian noticed. The future emperor needed men who did not bend under pressure. Belisarius, quiet and observant, seemed cut from a different cloth. When Justinian finally became emperor in 527, Belisarius became the commander he trusted most. The first test of that trust came almost immediately along the eastern frontier. The Sassanid Empire, Rome's ancient rival, was strong and aggressive. Its cavalry was among the best in the world, heavily armored warriors who moved with precision and speed. The Persians knew their deserts and mountain passes well, and they knew how to exploit weaknesses. Many Roman commanders treated the frontier like a routine assignment. Belisarius treated it like a puzzle. In 530, he faced the Persians at the Battle of Dara. The Persian commander expected a straightforward fight, but Belisarius had arranged the field to his advantage. He built trenches, positioned hidden cavalry units, and controlled the timing of the battle. When the Persians launched their charge, they found themselves trapped between Roman infantry and a sudden strike from the flanks. The victory proved that Belisarius could outthink an enemy as powerful as Persia. He was still young, but his reputation spread quickly. Yet before he could build on his eastern success, Constantinople erupted. In 532, the Nika Riots exploded inside the capital. What began as rivalry between Hippodrome factions spiraled into a full uprising. Entire districts burned. Senators used the chaos to challenge Justinian. Some wanted to replace him altogether. For a moment, the empire stood on the edge of collapse. While Justinian hesitated, Theodora, the empress, refused to flee. She insisted they stand their ground. Justinian then turned to Belisarius. The general marched into the Hippodrome with a small force, facing a crowd of tens of thousands. What happened next was brutal, swift, and decisive. The revolt ended, but the memory of blood on the marble steps of the Hippodrome remained with Belisarius for the rest of his life. With the capital secured, Justinian returned to his greatest ambition, restoring the lost Roman West. North Africa had fallen to the Vandals nearly a century earlier. Its fields had once fed the Roman Empire. Justinian wanted it back. And again, he placed the task in the hands of Belisarius. The expedition was one of the most daring in centuries. The sea routes were unpredictable, the army was small, and the coastline ahead was unfriendly. But Belisarius maintained strict discipline. He warned his men against plundering, kept officers in line, and made sure the fleet did not scatter. When they landed, they faced a Vandal kingdom confident in its strength, but that confidence became its weakness. Belisarius struck it ad decimum. The battle was chaotic, fought through dust and confusion, but Belisarius kept control of his lines. When the Vandals regrouped at Tricamarum, he broke them again with disciplined cavalry timing and relentlessly steady infantry. The Vandal kingdom collapsed quickly. North Africa returned to imperial hands. Justinian's dream of restoration gained real momentum. Then came the most demanding campaign of Belisarius's life, the War for Italy. The Ostrogoths ruled a land filled with Roman monuments and Roman memories. They claimed to protect Roman traditions, but Justinian insisted that Italy must return to imperial rule. Belisarius sailed west once more and captured Sicily with little difficulty. Then he marched north into the real heart of the conflict. Italy in the 530s was divided, uncertain, and weary of foreign rule. Belisarius understood this. He avoided unnecessary cruelty. He punished looting harshly. He treated civilians with respect. When he reached Rome, the city opened its gates willingly. For the first time in generations, the ancient capital returned to the empire. The Goths responded quickly. They encircled Rome and began a siege that lasted over a year. Food grew scarce, disease spread, the population suffered terribly. But Belisarius refused to surrender. He organized night raids, rebuilt cracked sections of the wall, and launched sudden attacks that shattered Gothic confidence. Even when morale sank, he somehow kept the defenders focused. When reinforcements finally arrived, the siege lifted. Rome remained under imperial control. This should have been the height of his fame. But politics in Constantinople had shifted again. Some courtiers whispered to Justinian that Belisarius aimed to hide that he wanted to rule Italy on his own. Justinian, never fully trusting even his closest allies, began to pull him back. Belisarius returned to Constantinople, honored in public but watched closely in private. He would be sent to Italy again, and again he would perform with quiet brilliance, but Justinian no longer gave him full freedom. Rival generals interfered. The emperor hesitated at key moments. The war dragged on longer than it should have. Italy was eventually reclaimed, but the victory felt incomplete, strained by the constant tension between emperor and general. Then came another Persian War. Belisarius returned to the eastern frontier, older now but still sharp. He defended Roman positions with the same patience and intelligence he had shown in his youth. Even enemies respected him. Persian envoys reported back that this Roman general never acted recklessly, never underestimated an opponent, and never claimed more than was necessary. Despite decades of loyal service, Belisarius could never escape the jealousy of court rivals. Near the end of his life, he faced a false accusation that he had plotted against Justinian. The charges were more insult than threat, but they wounded him deeply. For a time, he lived under a shadow. Many believed Justinian eventually realized the injustice and restored him, at least privately. Whether the emperor felt guilt or simply recognized his own dependence on Belisarius's legacy, no one could say. Belisarius spent his final years in relative quiet, far from the noise of campaigns and the heat of political intrigue. He had rebuilt provinces, crushed rebellions, defended frontiers, and restored lost lands. He had shown loyalty to an emperor who did not always return it. He died with less wealth than many lesser men who had done far less. Yet his reputation only grew. History remembers him not just as a great general, but as a rare kind of commander, brilliant without arrogance, loyal without blindness, disciplined without cruelty. Soldiers admired him. Civilians trusted him. Even enemies acknowledged his character. When later generations looked back on the age of Justinian, they saw an emperor with grand ambitions and a general who made many of them possible. Belisarius became the symbol of a fading ideal, a Roman soldier who fought not for glory or wealth, but for duty. The world he defended did not last. The empire Justinian rebuilt eventually fractured again. The territories won through hardship and sacrifice were later lost to new enemies. But the memory of Belisarius survived. His victories at Dara, his bravery during the Nika Riots, his conquest of North Africa, his endurance in the siege of Rome, and his quiet dignity in the face of suspicion, all these moments shaped a legend. People began to call him the Emperor's Sword, a weapon Justinian depended on even when he feared the hand that held it. A man who carved victories from impossible situations. A leader whose strength rested not just in tactics and strategy, but in character. The sword eventually returned to its sheath, but the legacy remains sharp. Belisarius stands as one of history's finest commanders, proof that in an era of ambition and suspicion, a man could still rise through merit, hold to his principles, and shape the fate of an empire.